Hey guys, welcome back to another video. Today we will be talking about an update on the polls, on what the polls are saying about the 2024 race. We're going to be looking at the polls in every single relatively close state. As you can see, a total of 248 electoral votes here are toss-ups. The other ones we don't need to talk about at all. Obviously, these are the safest of safe states. We know which respective candidate they will be voting for, whether they're red or blue states. So, with that being said, Kamala Harris currently has a 2.4% lead in the national average of polls. Again, this is the popular vote, so it doesn't necessarily matter. And what's interesting about this election is that the popular vote polls actually contradict what the Electoral College polls say, which is polls in each and every individual state. Because a 2.4% lead, yes, theoretically Harris could win. That is certainly possible. But Hillary Clinton, she won the popular vote by 2.1% in 2020. So with only a 0.3% over performance from Hillary Clinton, yes, things change in every state in terms of how much they are trending towards the left and everything like that. But that probably wouldn't result in a victory. However, as you will see when we go through each state, Kamala Harris actually does claim victory in terms of which state she is leading. So that just goes to show how close, historically close this election is, at least in the polling industry. When it comes to my actual forecast, whoops, let me zoom out here. I do have Kamala Harris winning. It is relatively close, but it's not as close as many of the, mainstream media forecasters will say. So with that being said, let's get into this video. We will be taking a look at the polling in every single relatively close state in the 2024 election. And we will start with some of these more Democratic safe states and then Republican states. And then we are going to move down closer and closer towards the dead even states, of course, like Wisconsin, Pennsylvania, Georgia, Arizona, states like that. So, with that being said, let's start in these pretty Democratic states, right? States like Colorado, New Mexico, Virginia, etc. That all went to Joe Biden, if this loads here, by a likely margin in 2020, a pretty healthy likely margin, right? Like 10-point victories. So as you can see, again, polling average, Harris +2. But when you look at some of these states, for example, what's one I brought up? Minnesota, right? Biden won it by 7 in the last election. Harris winning it by 6. That's exactly what you'd expect. About a 1-point trend towards the right as of right now. So on average, Harris takes Minnesota by over 5% margin, making it a likely margin state. Similarly, you've got New Hampshire. Looks even better for Harris here. She leads by 6.8% currently, which is pretty good considering that Biden won it by 7.4 in 2020. So if she's only doing 0.6% worse than Biden in 2020, that's an easy election victory for her. So New Hampshire definitely goes to Kamala Harris there. And then you've got New Mexico as well. 7.3% margin, right? Right in the realm of possibility. Trump is gaining a few more points here than those other states, but still, a very easy victory for Kamala Harris there. And then you move up to Colorado. I missed it in alphabetical order. Colorado not looking close at all. They don't give us an average here just because it is not even on anyone's radar. But you can see only 3 Harris versus Trump polls have been conducted so far. Vastly different from 2020. There were many more polls. Harris leads all 3 by significant margins, +10, +11, +15, all fall within the likely margin characterization there. So as for these likely states, these beginning ones, also Hawaii, I forgot to characterize that safe. Now let's go to Virginia as well as Maine in just a moment. So in Virginia, Joe Biden won the state by 10 points. He really outperformed expectations. Currently, Harris is ahead by 7.6% margin. But as you can see so far, this is right where you'd expect the margin to be. There are a little better margins for Harris in my current forecast. Again, this is forecast, not polls. But as you can see in my forecast there, Harris is ahead by 9.5. So, right around there, right? Polls aren't going to be spot on, and my forecast isn't going to be spot on, but they are pretty similar. So those polls I absolutely think will fall right around the correct margin. Then we've got Maine. Maine, of course, in the at-large vote, they don't give us an average, but let's see. So this, let's just go. Oh, I guess they don't give us the district. But we just got to look at the at-large polls here. So as you can see in this one, these are by congressional districts since they split their vote by congressional district. But as you can see in this at-large vote, Harris is ahead by 9 right there. Let's see, she's ahead by 17 and 17. Those were shocking polls. I remember covering those a little bit. So as you can see, those are right above the safe margin characterization. But when you average the plus 9, and then the plus 17 polls out, she does fall right in a likely margin territory. Again, no surprises yet. This is where my exact prediction stands right now. So now we'll move on to similar states as these, except they fall in the Trump column. So pretty Republican. We don't really need to talk about them too much. Except for one. One is interesting, that being Iowa. That we'll get to in just a second. We'll start with South Carolina because it's probably the most Republican of all of them. In South Carolina, there has only been one Harris versus Trump poll. Trump ahead by 10. He won it by 11, or by 12, so Harris is actually gaining ground if that poll does hold true, but it is just one poll. Now we'll move up to Ohio, once a very critical swing state, now not so much. Trump currently, it has gotten pretty significant, more significantly narrower in these recent weeks. Trump is ahead by 8%. At one time, he was ahead by 10%. 8%. He's actually matching his exact 2020 margin, which is, he wins Ohio, but that's not good for the rest of the nation. If he's matching his margin, then he loses because he lost in 2020. So Ohio, he wins by 8 points. That is where I think right around it'll go. Now in Maine's second congressional district, this is a bit different, of course, because again they split their electoral votes by congressional district. Here's the second district, right? I'm sorry, no. Up here's the second district. Trump leads by 7 in the latest poll, and then these were insane. I remember talking about these a lot. Harris took a lead of 5%. So when you average both these polls out, Harris plus 5, then Trump plus 7, Trump does get a very narrow lead in Maine second district, just a very narrow lean margin victory there. Now we'll move down, I guess, to Alaska, a state that doesn't get much polling. However, the most accurate pollster in Alaska does show a relatively close race compared to 2020. In the most recent polls, Trump is ahead by 8, by 7, by 9. When you average those out, you get plus 7. We'll even include, since we're including the September polls, we'll actually include this plus 5 poll, but still it is a likely margin victory. But I mean, just look at that, plus 5. He won it by 10 in 2020. So Alaska is a rapidly trending leftward state. It'll be very interesting to see how Alaska transforms as a more democratic state in future elections, but for now, it is likely. Now we'll move over a bit to the east. We'll go over to Iowa, I guess. So Iowa is a state that wasn't on anyone's radar, except, or I should say, until we had a poll from Ann Selzer's company. This is the most accurate pollster in the nation. They get it spot on literally every single election, even when they have the most outrageous results in their poll, like 2020. It ended up being exactly accurate. Now, this poll is outdated. I'm sure they will be releasing a new poll very, very soon. But their last poll was in early September, the 8th through the 11th, and it showed Trump ahead by 4. Now we have a couple other polls. We've only had one other poll actually, which is a plus 7% margin. When you average these out, you do get right above a 5% margin to make it a likely state for Donald Trump there. Now you'll head down. I guess we'll go over to Texas because I assume this isn't quite a lean margin on the average. No, it's not. Donald Trump leads by 6.6%, which is interesting. Obviously, again, the polls can be wrong, but he is gaining a point from 2020 despite Texas being a rapidly leftward trending state. So Texas, of course, is going to fall as a likely margin state there. Now we'll move on. We'll go up to Nebraska's second congressional district. This is the other state that splits their electoral votes by congressional district. Of course, in the general election, in the at-large vote, he leads by quite a lot, which we don't talk about. However, in the second district, which is right here, New York Times, Harris leading every single poll by quite a lot, by 9, by 9, by 8, by 9, by 11 in this poll. It is becoming a solidly blue district, one that we need to talk about less and less and less. Finally, to finish out the states before the 7 core battlegrounds, we do have Florida. Florida, once a key battleground state that was just about a toss-up in virtually every election. Bush only won it by 500 votes, is now a likely margin state. It was once a little close, 4%, very marginal still increase for Trump. He is at over 5% now. He does take the win in Florida by a likely margin. The last time Florida, I mean, this is significant. The last time Florida voted for anyone by a likely margin, I'm sorry, by over 5%, by a 5.2% margin or more, like Trump is. Even Bush in 2004 only won it by 5%, not over that 5.2. Last time it voted for anyone by over 5.2 was 1996. Bill Clinton won it by just 5.7%. So, this is historically significant to see Florida as a likely red state, but that is where it stands. Now, before we get into the 7 core battleground states, right, make up a combined 93 electoral votes, these states will decide the election. I do want to note that that even by margin, um, all but 2 states are exactly aligned with my current election prediction. And it's, of course, they're voting the same way. The margin is just a little bit off. I think that Texas is lean Republican. I think that Maine second is likely Republican. So I'm trying to make the point. I think that the polling industry, honestly, this is my bold take. I think that it will be back. Really, yes, we haven't done the 7 battleground states, but they're all predicting a really close race, and whoever wins, the polls will be pretty darn close. Since it's basically 50-50 in all them right now. So I really think that the polling industry won't be off all that much in 2024. They really have cracked the code of the hidden Trump voter. So now let's get into these final core battleground states. We'll start with some Trump states. We'll head over to Georgia, a state Biden won in 2020. Trump has now taken the lead by a significant margin, a 1.9% margin. This is the highest lead, and this is a trend that you will see. This is the highest lead Donald Trump, or this is the largest lead Donald Trump has had since the Kamala Harris versus Trump race began. Again, this is a trend that you'll see. Kamala Harris has really, I should say Donald Trump has really surged in the polling in the past couple of days, but still Georgia remains incredibly close. I can't stress enough when it comes to filling out this map how easy it is for pollsters to be off 2 or 3%. And I will tell you right now, all of these states are within 2%. They could so easily be off. Kamala Harris could easily win all 7 of these battleground states. Donald Trump could potentially win all 7. I doubt Michigan is possible, but it is even possible for him. So just keep that in mind. Just please keep that in mind. Speaking of Michigan, we will head over to Michigan, where Kamala Harris has the smallest lead of 0.6% since Donald Trump had the lead in July. On July 29th, the end of July, Donald Trump had the lead. And then since then, Kamala Harris has retained a lead, and she is now at her smallest lead again since Trump did have the lead. So, again, deteriorating in polling these past couple of days. It has changed dramatically, really. So, Michigan is still a tilt state, actually, for Kamala Harris. That is where the polling stands, a less than 1% margin there in Michigan. And it's just insane, really, to see such a clear consensus around polling, not necessarily who will win, but just how close it will be. Yes, they all show different leaders, but look, all of the polls are right next to each other. You never see this. Here's +2, Trump +1, even. Here's +1, +1, +2, +1, +2. You never see the polling all within a 4%, territory. They're all within a 4% territory of each other in terms of the margin. That is just starkly different from the usual polling industry, the shenanigans of the polling industry that we typically see. So it's just insane. It really is. Polling is very interesting this election cycle. I'm going to talk about it a lot, and not because it tells us the winner. I can't stress this enough. Polling is not going to tell us the winner. If you have someone leading by 0.6% in Michigan, it is not going to tell you the leader because it is impossible for an average of polls to be this spot on. So please, please, please keep that in mind. People are way too obsessed about polling. I'm just making this video because it's interesting. Now let's head over to another Harris state where she is in the lead, that being Nevada. I believe Nevada might be her largest lead, which is really bad for her because it's only a 0.7% margin. That is, well, she's had quite a small margin for quite a while now. But yeah, it's been extremely close to this entire race. I mean, her highest lead was 1.5%, which is still basically nothing, just about 50-50. So Nevada, she is ahead, but it is by a tilt margin. She holds her lead electorally. Now we'll head right next door to Arizona, where Donald Trump has the lead. He currently leads by 1.8%. You'll notice he has been gaining these past few weeks. And you'll notice the states where Trump is leading, his margins aren't as close as these Harris states, like the tilt margins in Nevada and Michigan. So Arizona, a lean state for Donald Trump. Now let's head up, or let's head east, I should say, to North Carolina. North Carolina is going back and forth, or it used to be going back and forth. However, it got a little narrow. Trump had a point lead, and now it's at 0.7%. Still remaining an extremely close race. I do think that Trump will win North Carolina. I think in my forecast I have it exactly a 0.7% margin, which is interesting. Yes, I do. Exactly a R plus 0.7% margin. But tilt margin in North Carolina, again, it could go either way, and the election changes. This election is too close to call, and I can't say that enough times. Now we will go to Wisconsin. Wisconsin, Harris ahead by an insanely close 0.2%. I cannot believe it. Again, if the average of polls, not just one poll, but if an average of polls says one candidate is ahead by zero point 0.2, it's 50-50. It could go either way. But again, not good for Kamala Harris at all. She was ahead at one point by 3.5%. She has never had this close of a margin in Wisconsin. Wisconsin is the clearest example of really a Trump surge really in these past few days in the polling. However, she does have a lead. So that means, despite these incredibly narrow leads in these states, it all comes down to Pennsylvania. Whoever wins Pennsylvania, as you can see, wins the election. So let's see who is ahead in the latest polls in Pennsylvania. And it is Kamala Harris. She is ahead by 0.4%. This one's been close for quite a while now. It's been under a percentage point since let's see, since the beginning of October. So for almost 20 days now, it's been under a percentage point margin for Harris. But the good news for her is, and this goes for a lot of the battleground states, she has retained a lead this entire race. Yes, it is extremely close, but it is clear that she is in the advantage in a lot of these states, considering that she has kept this lead. So it's insane, these margins. Yes, zero point 0.4 here. It doesn't mean anything, but she is ahead. She is projected to win in the polls with 276 electoral votes, only 6 more than she needs. It's excruciatingly close. Trump wins 262. So thank you all for watching this video. If you enjoy this type of content, please consider subscribing as well. Again, drop your comments to let me know what your thoughts are on this video, and I will see you all later.